I think, rod that's bent to form that profile of the tub, if you will. I have no idea how long to make this, but I'm using 20 gauge of vinyl, clear vinyl. No indication as to where people get things. I didn't want to make it out of plexiglass or Lexan. That would have less flex to it. I've seen other sidecars that were made with a flexible windshield. So I'm thinking that the clear vinyl, this is 20 gauge that I'm using versus 30 or 40 gauge, but I'll be able to use it as a pattern to see just how I'm going to be creating this. I have no idea how it's going to flare out. That rod that gives support to the top of the shield actually conforms to the shape of this 1-inch wide chrome bar that goes from left to right, right to left, whatever. So I've got to figure out what the drape is going to be on this. I have no idea until I cut this out, and I'm hoping not to make more than 3 or 4 mistakes, maybe one. But I'm assuming because of the radius of the 1-inch bar that this is going to meet to on the bottom, that it has to flare out in order to make that radius. So I'm coming up 16 inches from the edge of here. This is where I've got the vinyl mating up with. I'm going up 16 inches on both sides, and I'm going to flare it out to this edge right here, and over to here. I'm going to taper it up to there, and then I'm going to hold it up to the framework and see just what it looks like. Wide at the bottom, flaring up to that radius right there on both sides. I'm going to cut that out, and then because I can always come back and shave off this edge right here if this is going to be too long. Once I drape it on there, I could be way off. I would believe that you'd be able to see this steel framework. I have no idea how high above this 1-inch chrome bar should be to the top of here. I don't have anything to use as a pattern. I don't want it to be too extreme. Passenger sitting down could duck underneath this thing. Besides, this is adjustable through this friction disc. You got a washer. A lot of times people eliminate this or they misplaced them. Should be a washer behind this washer right here. Then 2 fiber pieces, like a cork and another one to give it some friction, so that when you tighten it down, but you can still move this, up here. Possibly not up and down. You do that at your house, adjust it for your passenger, then go away. But this, if you don't want to have the windshield, this is designed so that this can flex forward, claps onto here, so that flexible vinyl can sort of squeeze together like an accordion, and then drop down into your lower profile. Underneath here, there's going to be, I'm using black vinyl, automotive vinyl, to fill in this gap down here, and that's what this plate is here that I got from Jerry Greer. You wrap that into the fold of the vinyl and fasten it up underneath here. So that profile has got to be sort of like a weird shape as well, coming out to here. And I have no idea what I'm going to come up with just yet. But I wanted to see the clear vinyl that I just cut, just how this is going to drape on here and how it's going to mate from the center going around to that edge right there, all the way around. So I'm going to put this down, try to fasten some clothespins on here to hold it in place. I started out using a piece of clear vinyl, only 36 inches wide. Well, as it turns out, this lower section of the rail, the bar, to support the bottom edge of the windshield that I'm going to be making, or attachment of the weather shield to go underneath here, drape or whatever you want to call it. Turns out it's 40 inches, a little over 40 inches from this edge here to the opposite side. So, and this bowl, if you will, that's up here is shorter than that. So my first attempt to just drape the material on here, which was only 36 inches wide, of course, left a gap. And by the time I cut that first one, I didn't have enough vinyl left, so I had to go back and get another piece, which I made the mistake of draping on top of this top rail, if you will, down to here thinking it was long enough. So I cut it. Turns out that it wasn't. So I'm going to make another attempt. And so what I'm doing is doing this in gradients and seeing if I can't create a profile top to bottom with 12 inches in between and see if I can't drape this on here. This time I'm going to use a piece of heavy stock paper, brown paper that items have come wrapped in. But I'm going to divide this top rail into segments from that point down to here. There should be 10 segments from there to there. So I'm going to take my tape off and put it up there and measure it off again. And that way see just exactly where I need to be with my profile and see if I can't create the wrap that way. So we'll see. Okay, how to create the pattern for the windshield for the sidecar tub. I had some paper stock, heavy paper stock that came with an item that shipped in from someplace. I'm not sure where. Could have been Jerry Greer Engineering, for example, or someplace. But anyway, parts were wrapped with this heavy stock paper. So what I did was I cut a piece 42 inches long, which is the length of this bow right here. If you take a flexible tape, if you're going to be doing your own, take a flexible tape and secure it to one edge where the bottom is going to be, and drape it over the top, hold it in place with clothespins, get your overall length, because that top piece is going to be different than this radius right here. Excuse me. Depending on how tall or how big of a shield you want to have this way, I'm electing for a 12-inch view screen through here. You could have 10, you could have less than that. My Chieftain, for example, has got about 12 inches of visible space. Unless I raise the windshield, then it's taller. But this will put it, I think the rule of thumb is to have it right at where your eye level is going to be if you're sitting on the driver's seat of the bike, or in this case a sidecar, just to look over the top of it. You can always flex this upward to get a little bit more because there's going to be forgiveness with this adjustment right here. But I had nothing to go by, so what I did was I took the paper stock and I used clothespins up at the top. This is the top right here, and I draped it straight across. This is actually 14 inches, or was 14 inches from that point down to there by 42 inches wide for my drape right through here. It's more than enough to cover this edge. I put a crease right down the middle, so this is the middle of the top bowl, and this is where the bolt, in this case a carriage bolt, goes through. So this crease represents the center. Take this piece of paper, fold it in half. So one side, theoretically, if you measure out the one side, the profile, if you flip that over, you should get the opposite side. I'm going to see fairly soon here because I sort of marked this off. This is just a tentative. I had to wrap the bottom because this actually, with a 42-inch length, I had to cut off a triangular piece that went through here. Be very careful. This is actually too far. This is actually going to come up. The bottom edge of the vinyl is going to actually be on top of here, but then I'm putting a black rolled over piece of black vinyl on top of it to sew that into place to give it some rigidity, which will then fasten to inside the 5 mounting locations for the windshield to this bar. So anyway, I cut that out using a knife, but I'm using a scissors to cut along here. And I'm going to take this off and see about duplicating it. See what happens when I get done. Not surprising, after cutting this out, you can't assume that you've got a straight edge on the underside because of the curvature of the lower frame and the top windshield, whatever height that you want, or the width, I guess, of the window that you want to have. As you can see, this is what I cut out. And I'm going to mate it up to the sidecar frame, or the windshield frame, to see what it's going to do. But it's definitely not a straight edge from there to there, as well as on the top you can expect, because you're working with a curve. So yeah, regular cone's not going to work, a style. Once I do this, to get a pattern, I guess a word of thought is, or caution is, to give yourself a little bit extra room. You can always trim it off, just like a piece of wood. Once you cut it, what did I say, measure 3 times, cut once. But once you cut it, you're done. You know, so give yourself a little bit of room. You can always trim off the excess to what you want to do. or end up with. I'm pretty happy so far with how this is turning out versus how I was trying to do it the day before. But minus the wrinkles that are in the paper, because this is folded up inside of a box, actually squashed and put inside of a box to be used for the future. I'm glad I had this stiff paper so I don't make a mistake on another piece of vinyl. But this, the top, it's just put in place, but this is going to have a black edging, probably about 1 inch wide, will be in the shape of a U, and it'll be sewn around the top to make a loop or whatever to trap the steel, the framework. I actually had some 1/4 inch diameter rod, a stick, I guess that was about 24 foot long to begin with. I've used it for various projects. And what I used for forming this bow, which actually conforms to the radius of here, if you have a 60-gallon air tank, you got an air compressor. That pretty much is the same radius as what this bow is, just as an FYI. But anyway, I formed this, not knowing what it was going to look like. There will be some forgiveness because it's going to be hidden by this edging. But this is going to be, the top of this paper is actually going to be down underneath this bar. And then with the edging that's going to be on here, that'll cover this in the top. I'm going to be doing the same for the bottom, and then making a skirting. So the edging will be another U. It'll go up inside, in between, or sandwiched between the two chrome flat bar pieces that were formed for this radius. So it'll be hidden inside that. But then there'll be a skirting material that'll go from the underside of this to the top of the tub. That's what this bar is for. So on to the next step in cutting it out of vinyl. I decided, since I had some scrap Lauan, L-A-U-A-N, I guess it is, 1/4 inch thick from a stereo cabinet I took apart. I decided to make a template out of, instead of using the paper that was wrinkled. So I cut it out, making it to the shape, almost looks like a surfboard. Laid it out on my kitchen table on top of another board, and then I cut it out with a sharp knife. This is 20 gauge vinyl. I didn't have anybody locally that had 40 gauge, but I want to see what this is going to do. At the end of the day today, I managed to get my cut piece of vinyl in place. Now there's a little bit of warping in here because it's not pulled tight. I will have to do the edging on the top, I believe, first before the bottom to see just how it fits, and then sew that around the vinyl in order to trap the 1/4 inch rod that's used for the upper support for the windshield. So that will be probably tomorrow, mañana.